While you were watching the news this weekend, the world quietly reorganized itself, and Canada just landed in a seat that no country outside of Europe has ever sat in before. What happened in the next 48 hours will affect your job, your pension, and the future of every trade deal Canada signs for the next decade. Stay with me, because most people have no idea this even happened. Donald Trump ordered 5,000 American troops out of Germany on Friday. Then he walked up to reporters and said that number is just the beginning. He said he is weighing cuts in Italy and Spain, too. 80 years of American military presence in Europe, and the President of the United States is walking away from it. European leaders responded with public alarm. Poland's prime minister called it the ongoing disintegration of the transatlantic alliance. NATO's own spokesperson said Europe must now take greater responsibility for its own security. A vacuum opened up in real time. And within 48 hours, Mark Carney flew directly into it. Carney landed in Yerevan, Armenia on Sunday. Not for a tourist visit, not for a photo opportunity. He was there because Canada received an invitation that no country outside of Europe has ever received in history. The European political community was created in 2022, weeks after Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron built it as a forum for democratic nations to coordinate on security, trade, and the future of the European order. It meets twice a year. Its members include all 27 European Union countries, plus the United Kingdom, Ukraine, Turkey, Norway, Switzerland, and others. Every summit since its founding has been exclusively European, until this weekend. Canada is the first non-European country in the EPC's entire history to be invited. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan extended the invitation directly to Carney. 48 heads of state and government gathered, and Canada walked through the door. If you want to understand what that means for your retirement savings, your grocery prices, and Canada's position in the CUSMA negotiation, follow this channel. We track these developments every single day, and right now, every day matters. Now here is what most coverage missed entirely. The timing between Trump's troop announcement and Carney's summit invitation was not a coincidence. It was a collision. Trump pulled back from Europe on Friday. Carney was welcomed into Europe's most consequential political forum on Sunday. Two world leaders, two completely opposite directions, and Europe, sitting in the middle of that gap, is now actively looking for a new anchor. Think about what Europe needs right now. It needs security partners who are not dependent on Washington's mood. It needs trade partners who can deliver without political strings attached. It needs reliable allies who show up. Canada showed up. And the meetings Carney held in Yerevan were not diplomatic small talk. Let me walk you through exactly who he sat down with and why each conversation is bigger than most people realize. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Canada has been one of Ukraine's most consistent allies in weapons, ammunition, and financial support. Carney is now positioning Canadian defense firms to supply drones, ammunition, and advanced aerospace technology directly into European defense budgets through a program Canada joined in February called the EU Security Action for Europe. The $6.6 billion Canadian Defense Industrial Strategy, announced earlier this year, specifically identified this opportunity. Every defense contract signed with a European partner is a Canadian factory running and a Canadian worker employed. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa. Von der Leyen has already publicly endorsed Canada's proposal to bridge the European Union trading bloc with the 12-nation Indo-Pacific Trade Partnership. That bridge, if completed, would connect Canadian exporters to nearly 1.5 billion consumers without going through the United States. Costa has been pushing for deeper EU engagement with reliable, non-American partners. This meeting is where the architecture of that trade future gets built. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Poland is now spending 4% of its GDP on defense, more than any NATO ally on Earth. It is the eastern anchor of European security. Tusk looked at Carney on Sunday and said, "Our relationship and our friendship can be a role model for all our friends." That is not a courtesy. That is a country with serious defense money actively looking for partners who are not dependent on Washington. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. Two countries that Trump just threatened with troop reductions. Two countries that are now accelerating their search for economic and security alternatives. Both are significant trading partners that could deepen their relationship with Canada through the EU trade bridge Canada is leading. And then the invitation that stopped everyone in that room. The President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, asked Carney to address the full European Parliament in Brussels. He agreed immediately. A Canadian Prime Minister has never been invited to speak to the democratically elected legislature of 450 million Europeans. This is not a courtesy call. It is a declaration about where Canada stands in the post-American world order. Here is what ties every single one of these meetings together, and this is the part that the Trump trade team understands perfectly, even if they will never say it out loud. Every European partnership Canada builds reduces Canada's dependence on the American market. Every defense deal signed with Poland or Germany is a contract that does not run through Washington. Every trade corridor deepened through CETA or the EU Indo-Pacific Bridge is a market Canadian exporters can reach without needing American approval. Canada is not trying to isolate the United States. Canada is trying to be strong enough that it never has to accept a bad CUSMA deal just because it has no other options. And that leverage is being built right now, in real time, with 47 European leaders who are watching the United States walk away and looking for someone to fill that space. Canada already has CETA, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement with the European Union. It is the most ambitious trade deal either side has ever signed. 447 million European consumers, 98% of tariffs eliminated. Canadian exports to Europe have grown more than 30% since it came into force. Canada joined the EU Security Action for Europe program last February. Canadian defense companies can now sell directly into European defense procurement budgets. Canada is leading the push to connect the EU and the Indo-Pacific Trade Partnership. Von der Leyen endorsed it. Japan has signaled interest. And now Canada has a seat at the EPC, the room where Europe's most consequential political and security decisions are made. The first non-European country ever in that room. Now let us make this real for you personally, because a summit in Armenia can feel very far away from your gas bill. The defense deals being built in Yerevan create Canadian jobs. The defense industrial strategy targets 125,000 new positions in drones, aerospace, artificial intelligence, and advanced manufacturing. European buyers are the customers for those factories. The trade architecture being built through CETA and the EU Indo-Pacific Bridge gives Canadian farmers, manufacturers, and energy companies markets they can sell into without depending on American access. Foreign direct investment into Canada hit its highest level in nearly 20 years last quarter. Shell committed $22 billion to Canada's energy future. Total Energies and ConocoPhillips are calling Calgary. Global capital moves towards stable, strategically positioned countries with governments that know what they are doing. Every summit appearance, every European first, every historical invitation reinforces that perception. Your Canada pension plan benefits when Canada attracts more global capital. Your retirement savings benefit when Canadian companies have more places to sell. Your negotiating leverage on CUSMA improves when Washington understands that Canada genuinely has other options. There are things that are still uncertain. The EPC is a dialogue forum. It does not produce binding treaties on its own. The defense procurement conversations happening in Yerevan will take years to fully convert into signed contracts and delivered equipment. The EU Indo-Pacific Bridge remains in early stages, with no formal agreement signed yet. And diplomatic optics in Armenia do not automatically translate into leverage in a North American trade negotiation. American officials could choose to ignore the signal entirely. That is the honest picture. Here is what is confirmed. Canada is the first non-European country ever invited to the European Political Community Summit. Carney met with Zelensky, Tusk, von der Leyen, Costa, Maloney, and Sanchez in Yerevan. He accepted an invitation to address the European Parliament. Trump pulled 5,000 troops from Germany and publicly said more cuts are coming in Italy and Spain. European leaders are publicly calling for new defense and economic partnerships. And Canada has the concrete tools to offer exactly that. CETA, the EU Security Action membership, the Defense Industrial Strategy, and now a historic seat at the EPC table. The bottom line is this. This weekend, Donald Trump ordered American soldiers out of Europe and told the world more are coming home. In the same 48 hours, Mark Carney flew to Armenia as the first non-European leader ever invited to Europe's most important political forum. He sat with 48 world leaders. He accepted an invitation to address 450 million Europeans through their elected parliament. He met face-to-face with the leaders of Ukraine, Poland, Italy, and Spain, the exact countries Trump just moved to abandon. Trump pulled back. Canada stepped forward. Europe needed a partner. And a Canadian Prime Minister walked into a room that no Canadian has ever stood in before. The CUSMA deadline is 58 days away. Every single day between now and that deadline, Canada's alternatives are becoming more real, more funded, and more visible to the people in Washington who need to understand that Canada will not accept a bad deal. We track every development on this story every day. If this connected dots that the mainstream coverage missed, share it with one person who needs to see it. And if you want to stay ahead of every move in Canada's global strategy before it hits the headlines, subscribe. It takes 2 seconds, and right now, 2 seconds might be worth more than you think.